For this story, I want to bring us back to 2017 Star Wars Celebration in Orlando, one of the better celebration events that I ever attended. Me and my wife spent many hours building our costumes for this event, Jango Fett and Montrose, and we got to also meet Tamora Morrison in person, as you might recognize from the Book of Boba Fett series going on. Now, this event was great, also because of the fact that I got to finally meet a lot of different people from around the world from the 501st Blizzard Force Detachment. These are folks I only ever met online, so it was an awesome thing to be able to actually see and speak to them face to face, get to know them a little better, and to see some of the greatest people I've ever known. One of the biggest reasons I really enjoy going to Celebration too is the fact that I'm a big movie guy, especially when it comes to the prop building scene, the collecting, the research, that kind of thing. If my page is dedicated to researching development and kind of having a better understanding of the Imperial Snowtrooper from The Empire Strikes Back. And in the community, there's a lot of people who collect the screen use pieces, anything they get their hands on that's from production, be it concept art, scans of original production notes. In some instances, you might be able to, if you had the money to be able to afford a really cool piece like a helmet that was used on film. Of our generation, the most popular and recognized prop auction house is known as the Prop Store of London, based in the UK, and also have an office out of Los Angeles, California. Now, they had their booth there just like, every other celebration I've been to, they've always been present. And, I enjoy getting to go down there and take a look and see what's, what they have, what's, about to become available for auction. And this year, I had a welcoming surprise. Once arriving to the prop store booth in person, I noticed I saw a very familiar shape, Snowtrooper helmet, and a backpack in the case. And I was just kind of, wait a second, is this really happening? There's actually production pieces here. And this is a prop store of London that has them. I was actually quite awestruck by this, and just kind of sat there for 30 to 45 minutes just taking photos. In retrospect, not the greatest ones for this video, but I was just kind of like, I need to tell people about this. There's actually going to be some people that actually care enough about this as much as I do. And I knew what this meant for us. Well, the potential at least. Now, one of the biggest things I was concerned about being, a broke kind of guy and wanting to have it all and seeing, unfinished or production made pieces available for auction coming up in the near future, I came to the haunting realization that, well, sure, someone with the amount of money, at their disposal was going to be able to say, okay, well, I want to get that. Let's auction on it. Let's buy it. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, I'm a collector too. People who are just more fortunate or, wealthier are more capable of acquiring such pieces. I can get jealous for sure. I've, had my thoughts and all that, but I think everyone does at some point in their life, so it's nothing new. It's not morally wrong to be able to say, oh, I can afford this and I'm going to buy it. I don't believe in the contrary to that. So it was just a genuine fear of mine that whenever someone would get such a piece, it would just disappear into the ether, be shoved in someone's closet, never to be seen again. As someone who likes to research this kind of thing, I know it's happened to a few pieces, and it's their property. At the end of the day, I can't make anyone to say, hey, show me your screen use helmet and tell me everything about it. It's not something I can just do. So I can see it in person there. I can take photos all day long. By the end of the day, I won't actually be able to own it, and I always just presume by default it's just going to end up going to some private collection. Never going to ever see it again, and that's it. And unfortunately, in this case, I was 100% wrong. It was shortly thereafter, I would say, I can't recall if it was actually later that evening or if it was one of the nights before the con ended. But we all found ourselves at the Rosen Center Plaza bar area. This is like a lounge, a bar, obviously, and it was the place to be at after the con ended for the day. You'll find everyone from the Legion, across the world, to celebrities even out there just hanging out, having a blast, drinking, trading swag, and just generally having a good time. And it was over here where I actually first met Rob and Simon from RS Props face to face. So over the years, I have indirectly spoken with them, actually through a mutual friend of ours, Wayne. I don't know if he's watching this, but he knows what I'm talking about. But when I first became detachment leader for the Blizzard Force, and I was revising our costume standards for the Snowtrooper, one of the things at the time I remember was that they were reworking some of their then original Snowtrooper items. And I remember specifically with the helmet sculpt that they wanted some feedback on improving it, revising it, because they really do strive for accuracy, and that's one of the things about RS Props is that I will give it to them that they really try and go out of their way to be as accurate as they can be, and of course cast some original pieces if at all possible. So actually hanging out with Rob and Simon together, actually being able to speak to them for the first time, it was a great opportunity for me to actually get to know them, and also just talk about various topics between the 501st, the Legion, costuming, prop building, that kind of thing. And of course we got to the topic of the unfinished production pieces that were going to be sold from the prop store. And it was something that I was hoping for in the back of my mind, but wasn't hopeful it actually had happened, in that I was hoping that someone or some entity like RS Props would be, hey, we want to actually get these pieces. But that turns out to be exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to be able to get these pieces to make into products available to costumers, hobbyists, collectors, and this was something I was very happy to hear. So a few more months rolled by, and the actual auction was being held on the 26th of September 2017. And I remember seeing them posting about, hey, we're going to be auctioning on this soon. And then, I was a little concerned, I was a little scared, I was a little nervous, I was kind of expecting the worst. Just, I just don't want to have my hopes up and have them dash, unfortunately. But the next day, the 27th, they announced that they did win. They won both the helmet and the backpack from the auction. And I was more or less excited, thrilled, probably made one or two more cringe comments on social media just because I was just so happy with the news. And this was, to me, a great thing to enhance the prop building in Star Wars costuming community. Just the idea or the thought of actually finally being able to have a screencast Snowtrooper helmet and backpack available to anyone who was able to afford it was just enthralling to me. It was something that was never conceived or thought of possible. So to get into, I guess, a form of disclosure in my relationship with RS Props as it stands, if you want to call it that, began sometime shortly after they started working on an actual project for themselves. And to really make a long story short here is that I really acted more, I guess, as you can say, a consultant. I had my own expertise and knowledge in the subject, and I guess Rob and them were looking for more just like a kind of like a backup to their work and progress. So I just did want to stress the fact that although I did serve as sort of a consultant for this project with them, I had no real significant impact on the project itself. Rob and Simon, they knew exactly what they're doing. They have a great team who's skilled and already talented enough to have not even come to me at all. I feel it was more of a courtesy kind of thing. And with my position with the Blizzard Force attachment, my years experience in the costuming world with this, and just my overall knowledge, I felt that it was nice to be able to have your opinion valued to a degree, especially when you study this thing for a very long time, over many years, and it's actually being used by someone who actually needs the information. So I do really appreciate that fact. It kind of validates all the work I've done over the years. So once RS got to the point where they were ready to actually start producing helmets in a larger format, in response to, I guess, my consultation with them, they offered to send me, at no charge, a couple kits, unfinished, unbuilt, and two of the helmet and one of the backpack. This was a really nice gesture to me because it was really kind of them. I wasn't entirely expecting that. I was expecting to pay just like anyone else was whenever they were ready to start, selling these. And the one thing is that RS Props, they won't sell these helmets unfinished or unbuilt as they sent them to me, which is unique in that I get to build it my own way, and then also in the fact that they kind of trusted me enough to do that. It was conveyed to me that because of the simplicity of the construction of the helmet and the fact that they're trying to avoid potential recasters, this is why they do not actually offer to the public unfinished helmet kits. Now, to actually get into this review, per se, it's not going to be typical. The fact is that I built these helmets myself. These were kits that I provided, as I explained before. And so it's not entirely right or, I guess, correct for me to say I'm reviewing RS Props helmets from the perspective of I'm a customer who bought their product, received it, and I'm reviewing it as I received it. So this is really going to be a critique of my own work, how I constructed it, weathered it, in accordance to what we know about the Snowtrooper helmets, and of course addressing the mistakes that I made when building these helmets, as well as addressing some concerns or criticisms received from the initial offering of these helmets from RS Props, from other collectors in the community. The bottom line is that the RS Props Snowtrooper helmet is currently the most accurate offering available in the market. And it's not something that I take lightly when I say. It's not to be insulting or disparaging to any other vendor out there. It's just when you have something to cast off a production piece, it's just kind of hard to argue that it's incorrect. Of course, there's a lot of nuance also that must be said, in that the construction is also very key and fundamental to ensuring its accuracy. You can very much have something that's cast off an original, but if it's not properly trimmed, glued together, weathered, sure, it might look like the intended piece, but you can also say that it's not done right. As often things are with things that are perceived to be simplistic or easy to do, the Snowtrooper helmet does require an actual degree of skill and talent to be able to actually assemble it correctly. You have to achieve certain angles, you have to put the cowl on a certain way, you have to make sure the cowl is cut and trimmed in such a way that's actually going to look proper when worn, not just displayed. The nuanced details of construction and how to assemble it is something I had to learn. And with the first helmet I built, you see here, it wasn't as easy as you might think it was. It's easy for me to sit here and critique people and how they build things a certain way and say, oh, this is wrong, or you could have done this or that. But it was a learning curve. This is the very first time I actually built a helmet from the ground up. So some of the things I did not do as well as I probably did on my second one include how I attached the cowl under the eyes, how it was not really flush with the side profile of the helmet, and that the overall flare wasn't quite as wide as I really wanted it to be. One of the things you might have noticed about this helmet in particular is that the cowl has a very textured appearance to it. Those wrinkles are actually formed because of the fact that the two layers of KISS laminate are not actually glued together. I had assumed when I received this from RS Props in the mail that they had actually already split the layers and sprayed the adhesive between them. Now, of course, while this was an accident, it led to the discovery of how those creases were actually formed, which is actually seen on at least one helmet from the film. So with the second helmet build, I decided to try and really focus my efforts on trying to make things better than it was in the first. It's not to say that the first helmet is bad. It's actually quite nice. It's just that I really wanted to focus on certain key elements of the helmet, such as a pronounced flare, the way the cowl is attached underneath the eyes to reduce the amount of print from the face mask, as well as trying to fit me better. Compared to most people, I have a pretty short neck, and this means that the cowl has to be cut appropriately for me. since this is going to be my primary trooping helmet, I really had to make sure that it was going to look good. I didn't go over it earlier, but the cut of the cowl that I chose for the first build was designed or based off of the helmet sold in auction from 2012. Originally in my second build, however, I decided to try and do something a little different and actually try to base mine off of the exhibit, or tour suit as I call it. That cowl cut is unique and something that wasn't quite common. Although it looked really nice on display, it did not look good on me, and it did not look as nice as I had hoped it would look. And because of this, I had to go back and redo things and cut it down to how you see it earlier in the video. I want to use this portion to really talk about people's biases or perception of things. Everyone has an ideal version of what they believe or perceive something to be. And these biases and perceptions will actually lead people to believe things that are incorrect or false, not realizing that reference photos or just factual things about a certain thing prove otherwise. And the Snowtrooper is absolutely no exception to this. Some key examples of this with the Snowtrooper specifically are instances like where the cowl folds on the sides. People think the cowl is always perfectly V-shaped or just perfectly laid out over the shoulders. Another part is over the bridge over the nose, where there's actually supposed to be a gap between the cowl material and the helmet itself. I wanted to focus on the nose bridge portion briefly because of the fact that I saw a lot of feedback early on after the initial release of the Alan Flink Signature Edition helmets. And the biggest complaint I saw people echo was the fact that there was a gap between the nose bridge and the cowl. And this was a small detail that I did actually speak to Rob about, and I remember having that conversation when they were developing the methods and how they're going to build the helmets. I knew that some people might not understand it or get it at the time when we were talking about it. However, I didn't really think of that as being an issue because, we're trying to replicate a helmet as accurately as possible to the, production ones. So when I saw people complaining about it online, I would be like, oh, that's interesting. And then I'll have to post about it and say, this is what the screen use helmets were like. Now, I can understand that there's some instances or some of the people received products where the gap was like maybe too big. I think maybe I only saw that once where I would like, okay, that might be a little too excessive. But at large, people were assuming that these helmets were incomplete, unfinished, and it was sloppy QC on the part of RS Props. The other part of the helmet I wanted to talk about is known as the helmet flare. Now, perception always has the Snowtrooper helmet as having a very distinct or even sometimes exaggerated kind of wide open flare. Maybe not quite as extreme as a General Veers' helmet, but it is a key feature of the helmet's overall design. I'll bring this back to the RS Props helmet, is that when I was building it for the very first time, the thing was that I was trying to construct it correctly. And what I found was, especially after doing it the second time, is that the design naturally wants you to put it together such that it has a more vertical appearance. Case in point being that the very first one I did build did not have that nice wide flare that I was hoping for. As much as I do critique my helmet for not being as flared as I would like to, because it is my bias, the truth of the matter is that the original helmet sculpt, as you can see here, did not have a very wide or pronounced flare. In fact, it is quite subtle, very vertical. And this is also likely the reason why these helmets are just naturally built that way. And because of this, you can say that it's more truthful to the original design, however, not as movie accurate. So the next critical part of the helmet build is how you actually attach the cowls in the helmet. I find it fascinating when I was reviewing some of the notes from John Ball's notebook. His number one line item, as you see here, was how was he going to attach the cowls in the helmet. Over the years, it's been a topic of debate or discussion on how or what the best way of doing it is. Truth be told, we don't know exactly the precise method of how it was done, but we can only speculate. On my second helmet build, this was something I really wanted to focus on. I didn't want to have the tight face look that some helmets do have. I didn't want to have more of a free-flowing look. Also, to avoid printing or having the details underneath the cowl that are on the face mask from appearing on the surface. So to achieve this look, I only glued right below the eyes and nowhere else, right here and here. To give the cowl some more shape, I glued the material to the inside rim or the edge of the outer shroud, as you can see here. And in doing so, it forces the material towards the bottom to flare outward, a more rounder shape, and also, as you can see from the side profile, it gives it that iconic Snowtrooper look. Wrapping up this segment about the cowl, the rear is not that difficult. It really just comes down to making sure you have enough material and trimming it down to where you need it to be to achieve the proper shape. The last part of this helmet build I wanted to cover was actually about the weathering. Now, as you can see from the still image here, is that the costumes were fairly weathered. Some like to say or speculate that it was like that because of the fact that, hey, they're riding in AT-ATs, they're dirty, they're greasy on the inside. And so when it came to weathering the helmet specifically, RS was of the belief that there was actually a very specific technique applied here. It's not complicated, it's nothing special. It's just simply the application of clear modeling glue to certain areas of the helmet, letting it dry, and then applying your paint afterwards over it. The result from this is that you get these more iconic streaks as you see on the side of the helmet. The primary paint that we used here is actually a burnt umber acrylic. This is what we also believe is what was used for the originals. To take a moment here to talk about the actual quality, RS Props is always top notch. I've never seen anyone complain about the actual quality of the parts themselves. Sure, you can debate the accuracy all day long, however, they're going to give you a product that's always been solid. They're not going to skimp out on the materials. They want something that's going to be nice in your collection. Another small note about these helmets is that, they use the unfinished helmet as a reference point to also determine the actual thickness of the ABS needed. To some people who may not be as experienced in this hobby, they might view that as being too thin or flimsy, but I assure you that these helmets are quite durable when they're actually assembled properly. For my 10 plus years of wearing the Snowtrooper costume and having all ABS parts, I can tell you that my helmet's fallen and dropped and rolled many times and had no issues, no cracks, maybe some surface scratches, but we just call it weathering. Now this helmet, I can tell you just from having it as long as I've had it, is that this is going to be no different. The most extreme location I ever brought this helmet to so far has actually been Finland, Norway, where they filmed the hot scenes for The Empire Strikes Back in 1979. The temperatures there were very low. I was concerned about the plastic being brittle, not just with my helmet, but everything else. Common adhesives or other materials they use for construction of these costumes may not actually have the tolerances needed for these kind of temperatures, so you really got to prepare and plan ahead, depending on your circumstances you want to be in. One additional note, if you plan to wear this in very cold temperatures, like being in Finland, Norway, is that the Kiss laminate as a cowl material becomes very stiff. Now, what I had to do is that when we were getting dressed inside, I would put the helmet on, then shape it as best I could, then step outside, from which the actual cowl will freeze in place. Now, while this effect is great if you're trying to ensure you look good for photographs, the trade-off is that your mobility is hindered a bit. It almost is like you're wearing a Royal Guard helmet, or even a Snowtrooper Commander helmet, because it's hard to turn your head, at least it was for me. To combat this issue, I suggest ensuring that your helmet pads are tight on your head, or install a chin strap like we did. Just want to wrap up this video by saying how much I do appreciate what RS does for the prop building community. and for movie collectors and enthusiasts like myself. There's a lot of things that we just don't always have knowledge on, or even know how to network properly, that RS has been successful in navigating. And it brings us products like this, an actual screencast Snowtrooper helmet. And as I mentioned earlier on in the video, it was something I never, believed to be possible. And so I take great pride in knowing that there's people like RS Props available. Rob and Simon, they do their due diligence and all their research, and they do what is necessary to ensure that they're being as correct or as accurate and as proficient when it comes to bringing the products to the market. And you're probably actually watching this video because you do have some interest in RS Props and what they do offer. I can only speak from my experience, and it's been a very good one so far, and many others have echoed the same sentiments. And even in more recent times, they've become a major powerhouse within the collector's community, not just by offering exclusive prop pieces, but bringing to the public these very rare interviews and discussions with the people who actually worked on these films and actually built these props. So it's a very fascinating thing that they're doing for all of us that, otherwise we would just never have even known about. And something to keep in mind is just how long ago these movies were actually made. The unfortunate reality is that, these people are not going to be around forever. And so the kind of work that RS has been doing for all of us has been invaluable, in my opinion at least. And on that note, we're not going to be around forever either. We may collect these things and hope to God that when we pass them on to our children, that they're going to keep them and not sell them on eBay for 50 cents a piece, but, hold on to them and value them as for what they are. Because to me, this stuff is tangible history that we all get to benefit from. And so generations far into the future who are also into this hobby are going to have to look back and realize that the foundation that they're resting on was built by giants. Giants like RS Props.